Welcome to the Society Pod, a podcast for entrepreneurs, marketers, and leaders. Here's your host, Jessica Yarmy.
Hey there, everybody. Welcome to this week's episode of the Society Pod. My guest today is an entrepreneur. He's a turnaround operator, a CFO, a financial strategist to some of the boldest fitness and wellness brands in the country. He's super passionate about fitness and wellness, which is why we're having him on this show. He fixes broken cash flow in fitness businesses, which we love. He's the CEO of Stratego as well as Valicites Insight Group. He's doing so many things. Welcome to the show, Albert Ramos.
Oh, I appreciate you. Thank you so much for having me on. It was so good to see you out at Beyond Active in Dallas. I've been following you for a ton of time and watching your podcast. You've had tremendous guests, so it's just such a pleasure to be on. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much for carving the time. And it's always good to meet LinkedIn friends in real life. When you meet friends in real life, how do you introduce yourself? Because you're doing so many different things.
I'm Albert Ramos. I am the CEO and founder, as well as fractional CFO of Stratego, which is a fractional CFO and AI consulting firm. I niche into the health, wellness, and fitness space, or as Pete Moore likes to say, the Halo space. So I am a Halo executive, Pete. I've been in the industry for 16 years, and I'm very passionate about changing lives, as well as the innovative wave that's going on right now in our industry. And what I learned through that time, not only in the last 16 years, just being in the industry, is that the financial literacy still needs a lot of work, a lot of help, a lot of education. And there's a lot of franchisor, boutique, studio owners, independent gym owners, social wellness club owners that need help on the finance space, whether it be the accounting and bookkeeping and into my favorite, which is strategic finance side. And that includes bank relations, budgeting, cash flow forecasting, as well as raising capital. And so that's where I spent a lot of time. And as you mentioned, with some really strong brands, some growing brands, and I'm really excited about that.
Can you give us some of the brands that you work with, or can you share some of the projects that you've worked on just to frame this up for everybody?
Yeah, so I'll give you the most recent one. So Alchemize House, co-founded by Dana Head and Rave Reed. We're actually on a journey of raising their seed round, so raising capital, which has been phenomenal. We've had a lot of interest in having a lot of conversations with venture capitalists, but more so angel investors and private equity and some family offices. We're really excited about that. So that's a big project for those that are looking to raise money. Typically tap me on the shoulder. That could also mean from a debt financing as well. You know, a lot of people don't understand the options that they have around like line of credits, SBA loans, et cetera. And so I'm well versed there and have a great network of people that help me specifically in this space. There's also Citizens Holding. You just had Strugo on the show recently, which that was amazing, and got a chance to see her here in Dallas as well, which is always so nice. She traveled over from California, but doing some great work there, some good mentorship there and some good collaboration. I worked for Lifetime for 6 years as well. I've done some work with The Well, New York. I also helped a company called Plunge House and Relentless Brands, and the list goes on. A lot of work in the wellness space and fitness space, but also do construction, manufacturing, oil and gas, retail. The fundamentals really don't change from industry to industry. Unit economics and business model do, but the fundamentals don't change.
Well, I love that you've picked the niche of the fitness and wellness industry, because there are so many brands that are great brands that don't have the financial literacy to really establish themselves to scale as big as they should be able to scale. I wanted you to give the brand background because you heard some small brands, and then you also heard up to larger brands and even brands that are looking to get seed funding and go larger. But let's start on the very small side. So if you're advising a single unit owner or very early on, what are some of the things you're seeing fitness brands do wrong very early on that you end up like looking at, seeing immediately, and helping them course correct?
Yeah, really good question. One of the first things that I do when I lift up the hood is I go directly to cash positioning. What is the cash flow positioning that is going on? And I would have found a lot of owners in our space, unfortunately, because of the way they've been mentored and educated on, they've been married to the P&L, which is important. I'll come back to that. The one thing that I realized that people are just not spending enough time on, not only on the actual, but how do I see the future around cash positioning, my inflows and outflows, That's the number one. And typically, when you don't have a lot of units, just something you're not really paying attention to. Maybe it's just new membership ads, and the P&L and the revenue side of things. I look at flow through down to the bottom line. I look at margin assessment. So from your cost of goods sold to your labor margin to your EBITDA margin, right? Cents on the dollar. Those are really, really important, especially as we hear a lot about, hey, how are you going to expand your ecosystem? How are you going to create more value? What other offerings are you going to create within your square footage, or maybe even digitally as well if it's not brick and mortar? Those are really important. You don't want to just follow the trends to follow the trends. It's what's going to be the most profitable vertical for you, right? If you're going to make 2 cents on the dollar, is that something you really want to invest dollars and people resources to, or are you looking for 20, 30 cents, etc.? Cash flow, number one, unit economics and margin assessment would be the other key areas that I find that just aren't tightened up. And then where I really like to spend time on the FP&A side, and why I started Valus, which is my AI-powered FP&A business. And actually, when appropriate, I actually roll that into a financial upgrade or financial tech stack upgrade when trying to help out some of these independent single unit as well as franchise, private equity roll-ups, et cetera.
So if you're looking under the hood, so to speak, are there certain numbers that you look at that indicate the health of a location? Are there certain margin percentages? Are there certain metrics that you kind of look at to say, okay, yes, this is like healthy and in good shape?
That's a really good question. So I'll start back what I mentioned earlier from a cash flow perspective, cash runway. So I'll take a look at, right, some of the beefier numbers around your working capital. You being an entrepreneur as well, you understand this, and many that are listening as well, is the things that keep us up at night are, am I going to meet my payroll obligations, right? Am I going to meet some of these costs that I know are going to come in, month out to operate this business so that my members are taken care of, my team members are taken care of? So cash runway, which I always highly recommend, if you don't have a cash flow forecast, a 13-week, we'll keep it as simple as that. If you don't have a 13-week cash flow forecast and to look in the future, that is a very stressful environment to be in when you're like, I wonder if I'm going to make it, rather than I know if I'm going to make it or not. And does that mean I need to tap into my line of credit, or actually do we have enough cushion, enough cash flow floor to know I'm fine. Actually, I could reinvest these dollars back in, or, save it there. That's the number one. There's other metrics when it comes to membership or ancillary revenue. Average dollar per member is a big one, actually. So I'll definitely earmark that. I really like to see growth there. That gives me an idea or temperature gauge on the state of the state or the health, but also the customer acquisition costs. I think there's so much going on right now. And if you're not really paying attention there, you're really missing out on some of these AI tools. There's a lot of conversation around SEO versus AIO. Owners, business owners, franchise owners, boutique owners, studio owners, they need to be paying attention to that metric as well, your customer acquisition cost. So cash flow, share of wallet or average dollar per member, obviously unit growth and churn and membership ad, et cetera, and all the things that go into that from a lead appointment show conversion, et cetera. But customer acquisition costs, and I heard it from Sander from Purpose Brands and some others, it's going to become a very saturated space. The capital roll-ups are going to happen more often. There's definitely going to be some consolidation, but in a saturated environment, your unit economics are going to get pressured. And so you also need to understand, how can I be more efficient? What's my, not just human headcount for 2026 and on, my digital headcount as well.
Digital headcount meaning your tech stack, meaning the people who run your tech stack? Dig into that a little bit.
I'm glad you asked that question, because it's funny. I was in a room of 150 CHROs and CFOs, and I asked that first question. I kicked off the speech that way. It's like, what is your digital headcount strategy in 2026? And I just saw the eyes just like glaze over, like, what is he? He's crazy. And I said, no, what is your AI agent? What's your AI GPT headcount for 2026? It's funny at face value, but when you get to see, including this wellness event, Beyond Active, it's already here. Companies are already using agents. They're already using GPTs. They're already using AI in replace of what a human was doing. I'm not saying those humans weren't repositioned as something else. What I'm saying is those tasks, those things that were typically owned by a human, is now replaced by a digital species, which is what I like to call it, an AI agent. I think a lot of organizations, including in our space, need to think about, well, what is my digital species headcount goal? What makes it challenging, however, on a finance perspective is how do you forecast for these things? How do you model your financial models to take into account not just a software line item, but an actual agent? Who's going to be managing those agents? What is the ratio? I think there's a lot of people like me that are looking to solve for that for future financial models and budgets.
All right, I want to put a pin in that because I need to come back to that, even just from a marketing perspective. Like, I need to pick your brain.
Oh, I'd love to talk about that.
We need to go there, but I want to stay on the finance side just for a moment because I think your brain has a lot of information. And we were just at Beyond Active and I was talking to a lot of owners and they're talking about scaling and they're talking about going from unit 1 to 2 or from 2 to 3. Everyone wants to get to that double digit number, to unlock like proof of concept. And so if you're advising a brand that's trying to make that move, open their second location, are you looking at certain numbers to say like, okay, yes, this green lights you to open that second location? How do you think about growth in terms of like unit count?
So in addition to what I mentioned earlier around cash flow, share of wallet, average dollar per member, customer acquisition costs, I'm looking at historical, right? So in any type of M&A transaction, raising money, there's going to be a due diligence process. If you're not in that space and you have the capital, you're on your own, or maybe you're doing some type of bank debt financing or something like that. I mean, there's due diligence no matter what. And as an owner, you need to be doing the same, thinking of doing due diligence on your own financials, meaning the P&L, the balance sheet, the cash flow statement, all the data within your accounting ERP, or maybe some are using QuickBooks or what have you, as well as the unit economics around membership, personal training, F&B, potentially longevity, wellness, whatever the other verticals are. But you have to be doing some due diligence around that. And whether it's looking at comparables, well, what are my competitors doing, or comparables within this space, like Pilates addiction versus Club Pilates or what have you. There's data out there. So I think just taking a look at that from a historical, from a comparable, right? And then what is the trend line? Like, how are you growing currently? How are you growing membership? At what pace? At what rate? How are you going? And I'm going all the way down to EBITDA. And if those numbers aren't making sense or the cash positioning is not there, it's very risky to go say, hey, let's go replicate this, right? So the unit economics have to be there. And that's just on the finance side, right? That's one variable. Then you want to take a look at, well, what does my operating workflows look like? Are we efficient there? What's my people strategy look like? Are we efficient there? Which kind of goes back to that AI piece. And we have to be careful though, including in our industry. And I mentioned I'm in different industries. So, everyone's spending time on how much of this AI, am I AI first? I'd be very careful to say we're AI first. That doesn't seem, and we saw a study from McKinsey or some others, BCG, it doesn't seem to be a strategy that's working. It has to be, what are the low-hanging fruits and what are the pain points that you can solve for?
I want to stay with that single unit owner or stay in that early stage kind of brand. We're hearing from founders that they want to grow, that they want to open more units. And I think in a lot of instances, owners feel like they have to self-fund, or from one location funds the next location. But you early on in this conversation kind of mentioned 3 other ways to arrive at funding. If you're an early gym founder, early stage kind of gym brand or fitness brand founder, what are some of the channels that you have available to you to raise money or to get money so that you can open your second or open your fifth even? How do you recommend people find money?
Depends on what the brand is, and going back to the unit economics, what that is, what the business model is. Everything's different, right? So I mentioned some brands already. All of them are going to take potentially a different financial strategy if they're looking to expand, right? I always recommend, if you have the capital yourself, you believe in the brand, obviously you're operating yourself or through, your team. I think that's a good strategy, because I always let owners know, when you start playing with other people's money, OPM, right? Whether that be a bank, so institutional money, or some type of private equity or individual investor, just understand their hands are now in the cookie jar. It's very rare that you get a silent investor that says, hey, just take my cash. I don't need to know. Just work my money, right? That's very rare. It happens, but it's very rare. So if you have the opportunity to use your own cash or your own capital, excellent, right? Or you're able to reinvest and actually cash flow so that you're not debt financing, right? Or getting other hands in the cookie jar and giving up some of your business. Excellent. Now, that's very hard. And also the likelihood that will happen, slim to none if your due diligence isn't there, et cetera. So it's possible. Now, the other routes that I mentioned earlier, right? So there's bank institutions. A lot of people, and especially in our industry, because I think of the financial literacy, they're very intimidated about going to a bank, or they are not prepared. Banks are my best friend. because I know before I even meet with them or reach out, I'm going to have your financials locked in, right? From just your financial statements from the P&L down to the cash flow statement, but also your cash flow forecasting. I use AI to make sure I'm hitting every single checkbox so that when I walk into that office, I tie it with a bow and they say yes to me, whether that be an SBA loan, right? Or a line of credit or, other creative strategies. So that's one route, is the bank institution. I like that route a lot. A lot of people think, oh, I'm going to go into debt. Well, it's business debt, right? And I get there's a guarantor process and all that and business credit, etc. The harder thing to do, especially right now, because there is a lot of economic macro uncertainty, although it's very hot in this space, especially on a wellness front. You see like Othership or some AI wearable brands. But I do think it's a lot harder on the actual VC, private equity, especially at the stage you're talking about, right? It's very difficult to get their attention when you don't already have 10, 15, 20 plus units, right? Because they're looking to roll up. They want to see proof of concept, like actual what's going on at a multiple. At that stage, you're looking for more of a family office, individual angel investor. That's probably a good strategy. Very rare, probably at that stage, you'll see VC money flowing unless you're a huge differentiator. Obviously, there's a lot of talk about AI. So if that's your business concept or it's in the DNA of your business, then you're going to get some attention. But if it's just this brick and mortar, right? We know it's capital intensive. Think equipment, think reformers, right? Very hard to get that money just because they're looking for quick payback period, right? ROI. Those are some different strategies. And again, I know I'm throwing a lot out there, but typically what I find is not a lot of people know they have all these options, especially even, we're talking about growing. I'm sure there's people that are out there that I'm like, shoot, man, our backs are up against the wall. Are we just going to go and bankrupt this out and we quit or we close it down? I always chat with owners like that. Like before you do that, you're aware you have these different options versus slashing all your payroll and then eventually putting the chains on the door and saying, we're done. There's other ways.
It seems like it is a little bit of like a matchmaking process, maybe for people who aren't financially savvy. We kind of bucket it into, I need more money. But you as a banking kind of finance person, you see it in really different categories. And so how do you like match make for people with like, what are their needs versus what money to go after or what channel to go after to get that money?
When you start going down the avenues where other people's money is going to be invested in your business, I always start with less about the check or even like the shininess of that venture group or private equity group. It's to the owner. Let's walk through like, what's the mission? What's the purpose? What are our values? If you were to have a strategic investment partner, who are they? Let's start to paint the picture of who this person or people are, because when you really get into it, when you start investing or getting an injection of money, it becomes less about the money. It's actually more about, can we work together? Do we like each other, respect each other? Do we have the same vision? Are we aligned on the strategy? And not to say it's going to be perfect, but that's really important that you vet out that subjective, then get into the objective of, having your numbers in a row, getting that check, et cetera, or multiple checks or what have you. I think that's really important. You're right. It is a matchmaking, right? So it depends on who the business is, who the co-founders are, or founder is, or owner, CEO, management team. That's really important that you understand who do you want to partner with before they hand over a check, because I've seen that go really, really bad when that vetting process doesn't work. And sometimes it's asking others that have been invested by those, whether it's a bank or a private investor or private equity, how was it operating with them? I think it's really important to vet those things out.
Well, and you've probably seen in the fitness industry, a lot of people will connect into brands and invest into brands because they love the modality versus we follow similar philosophies on how to do business, or we follow similar decision-making or risk-taking kind of processes. But it's, I love the way you teach, or I love your classes. And so I'm going to invest in either as a franchisee or as an early stage investor into a concept. You get distracted by the brand or by the fitness side versus really looking at the business or the numbers.
Yeah, you're spot on. Spot on.
We're just at Beyond Active. Are there any fitness related finance topics that we haven't dug into that you kind of want to shine a spotlight on before we move on to like AI agents and the marketing side and all the other fun things that you do?
I mentioned Pete Moore earlier around Integrity Squares and his Halo concept. I think that is really exciting what he's up to, and Artie, who's so impressive on stage. I really do think we need to have more of those types of conversations. I was so surprised, I saw the keynote with Mark Mastroff, who was outstanding, and some of the other speakers. And I noticed for the finance section, the room was probably cut by 75%. I was very surprised by that. And I know I nerd out on these things, but just in the environment we're in, both macro and micro, and knowing how saturated some of these spaces are and those modalities and competitors, et cetera, they're all here. I was really surprised that more people weren't putting their ears to the ground when it came to the financial side. There was a ton of value there on what to do with VC, what to do with private equity, how to look at your own business from profitability, right? And some of the things that I mentioned earlier. So I just think we need to start thinking that way. I came up with an industry from a sales, from an operations, from a marketing. A lot of the leadership that I'm seeing in the industry don't really come from a financial side of things. We need to make sure we're brushing up and educating ourselves on the financial side so that we have more winners, right? I want to see these faces and some others. I want some more winners and less businesses failing or having to consolidate or sell at a discount if you're doing that. So yeah, I'd like to see more people learning about and talking about the financial side in our industry.
Well, the industry is notoriously siloed and notoriously very competitive. So I think there's always been a hesitation to share data, whether it's membership data, usage data, financial data, like any of it. There's just a culture internally in the industry of just not wanting to share learnings. I so agree with you that having the conversations and sharing numbers is an important way for us all to improve and get better. And I know that you somewhat started down that path with your podcast because you're now sharing best practices through your Valid Sites podcast. So what inspired you to start your podcast, and like what kind of conversations could someone expect to hear on your pod?
So one of the big things about me that people will learn is I'm very curious. I'm a learner. That's one of my strengths. So that's actually a big reason, not only because of the brand exposure for Valid Sites, but really to learn. And then for others that are listening in, to learn from some of the financial executives, CFOs, VP of finance, head of finance folk that I have coming on. Many of them also very open-minded and using great use cases around AI. So I typically do 3 to 4 episodes in a row that is catered to finance. And then what I do is I sprinkle in, just for my love of fitness and wellness, we have some people that have come on, like Justin Campbell. Congrats to Justin Campbell on his new role as the CEO. Kathleen Ferguson came on, right? Another major connector. Speaking of collaborating and sharing, I mean, she is a pioneer and influencer when it comes to that, sharing at Coach 360, sharing all these best practices. Deborah Strugo is another one, just an all-star rock star. She's been on your show. Another one that wants to collaborate and share. Mo Iqbal. I look forward to potentially having him on the show one day. So you can expect a lot of financial education and also seeing the latest and greatest as we talk about finance and AI, or finance and agents or agentic workflows. But then you also get the sprinkle of fitness and wellness, right? I had Rave Reed from Alchemy's House. You get to hear about these social wellness clubs like Alchemy's House, Othership, Soho, the new and exciting things that are coming on. Spent time with Michael Parrish over at Halo Therapies, and you start to understand what's going on with all these amenities and features and modalities, strengthening our entry into hospitality, the actual hotel space. I think there's actually going to be something going on in the hospital space, our industry, not just from a healthcare, and you're seeing a lot of that longevity, digital storefronts, peptides, easier to get healthcare access from your home, or standing right here, I can get on, some type of telehealth. But I actually think the hospital experience is going to be impacted by this wellness, longevity, fitness push that people are so highly aware about since, 2020. So I actually think that experience, you think about the hospital experience, it's not fun. It's like the lighting, there's not a lot of going on there. It's pretty bland, but it's never a fun place to be because there's always probably some, unless you're having a kiddo, but even then there's just stress of health. I want my baby to be healthy. So I think the wellness space is going to introduce itself in there too, which I'm really excited about. I have a lot of experience now in the retail hospital space, and I've seen it firsthand, personally and professionally. The experience can be a lot better.
I started to ask you kind of about your podcast, and we'll link your podcast into the show notes just so everyone can follow your podcast as well as subscribe and follow to my podcast.
Thank you.
It now seems like you have a little ecosystem. And so for you as an entrepreneur, did you intentionally set out to build an ecosystem, or how did your multiple ventures kind of start to come to be?
It's funny that you say that. I had a lot of training and I learned a ton while being at a great public entity, Lifetime Athletic. They've done a tremendous job on building a moat, right? Building an ecosystem. I think the best way to compete with Lifetime is obviously at each one of their verticals, but it's very difficult to do. And it's very difficult to replicate their entire ecosystem. It's too capital intensive and been at it for a long time. So they're doing a great job. But as an entrepreneur, I took those learnings and realized, well, from a financial side, including both finance and AI, I can create an ecosystem within my niche. I'm all about points, right? Journey points, pain points. Well, I know the accounting and bookkeeping side. I know the financial side. I know there's some pain points within the FP&A side. How can I layer in AI within this? Look at some of these different areas of a startup, beginning of stage to a more mature unit or multiple units. I've been there. I've actually been an operator outside of being the financial executive. I've been an operator. I've ran stores, I've ran clubs, or as the private equity or VC let us know. No, we call them boxes. I've ran boxes, multiple boxes, up to 3,000 team members, a portfolio of 200 mil. So I get it from small, high volume, low price to the luxury hospitality, $500,000 a month demo like a Remedy Place or The Well or Alchemize.
So you as like an entrepreneur, it just seems like maybe it's the curiosity leads to solving for problems that you see, but you're definitely a builder. Maybe at your core, you're building in finance, and then you're also building in AI, and then you're also building in podcasting and content and LinkedIn. How did you discover that about yourself?
Ooh, that's a good question. So I come from a line of entrepreneurs. My grandma and mother were also entrepreneurs. They come from a beautiful country called Peru. So they immigrated over eventually. My dad and his family were entrepreneurs in Chihuahua, Mexico. They came over to Mexico, California, where they both met, but both entrepreneurs. So it's in the blood. And it's funny, growing up and, spending time with my dad, he used to actually tell me, you don't want to be an entrepreneur. You go through the grind. It's the ups and downs, right? There's the economy that can impact certain things sometimes. So he said, go get a good education and climb up the corporate ladder. And I did that all the while having that itch. And it first started off as an itch and how can I protect my taxes, right? Because a W-2 income, right, from a tax perspective is not like being a business owner or having passive or portfolio income. So not to go into the weeds there, but, I thought about all those things and I thought about the skill sets and competencies that I've gained along the way over the last 16 years, some great mentorship. So I just decided, let's go all in, one step after another, a lot of W's, a lot of, lessons learned from some failures, right? And you just keep going, you keep digging in. What I've noticed, especially as I spend time with other entrepreneurs, it's about just outlasting, like not just the work ethic. There are going to be those times where you have to just suck it up, be resilient, get through it, ask for help, raise your hand, be emotionally available, raise your hand, say, I can't get through this. I feel like I don't want to do it anymore. I think we need to chatter about the messiness more. I like to do that on LinkedIn. I like to share more of the messiness. Yeah, the highlights and we all do it, or the learnings, but also like this didn't go well. I think we need to chat about that more because sometimes I think we're trying to put our best foot forward, which is great, can be very unrealistic to those that are looking up and saying, oh, I want to be an entrepreneur. Wow, it looks amazing. It's very hard. Sometimes it's not amazing. And a lot of people aren't prepared for that and they pull out, they quit.
The amount of wins and losses, it definitely seems more like loss, occasional win. Are there any like wins and losses or highs and lows that you want to kind of call out in your history as an entrepreneur, or like big lessons that you learned along the way that you want to share?
When you're building a brand, you got to be very careful, especially when you're, highly ambitious and you want to grow, is not over committing or biting off more than you can chew, because the reality of it is, someone like me, people are hiring you on and they want the best work. They don't care about what you're doing outside of their entity and who else you're helping out. If you're not giving them the best and the value, it's not worth it to them. So for the entrepreneurs out there, I'd say, just make sure that you're very realistic in your planning. And when you commit all in and you're not over indexing yourself. Your bandwidth is just completely stretched out where you're giving half-ass service to those that you're saying you're going to serve and commit to. So I would say that I've learned that. And that's been a learning lesson, I think, throughout my entire life. I just like to run and go throughout the years. And now that I'm a little bit older, I've learned that and just become far more professionally mature about that. You want to take care. We're here to serve people. We're here to take care of others and, have have high integrity. So that's number one from an opportunity perspective. I'm always hard on myself, so I can go through all the opportunities left and right. There's been some good wins too, and some great relationships that have been made throughout this process, and just getting started.
What do you feel like is your strength as an entrepreneur? And then what's something that you're working on or that you're focused on in your entrepreneurial journey?
I think some of my strengths, obviously, I've mentioned some from a financial, both educational, some self-taught, a lot of self-taught, right? All of that is a strength of mine, just being able to see trends. I'm very thorough. I'm a line by line guy, sell by sell type of financial guy. The other thing that I've learned, however, is this combination of finance, operation, and tech has really helped me. I've always been a quick learn. I've always liked to dabble and experiment, but really just learn. So I've had some great relationships and mentorship around those three areas. And you typically don't see a lot of financial executives that understand the operational side and the tech side. And then I think my last one is the communication side. From a courage perspective, not afraid to get in front of the bank or investors or the boardroom, et cetera. So a lot of people will tap on my shoulder because that's not a strength of theirs from a communication or storytelling, including all the financial stuff, but be able to take that and actually simplify and speak through trends or what is the story, business model, unit economics of the business. So I would say those are some of my strengths. And then from an opportunity perspective, actually, you maybe be surprised about this. Yes, I'm on doing Valid Sites, the podcast, and yes, I'm at conferences, and yes, I'm meeting with people throughout the week, throughout the month, throughout the year, left and right, traveling throughout the country. I'm actually a lot of anxiety, a lot of self-doubt, a lot of imposter syndrome effects. So I think just giving myself grace. I try to pray as much as possible through those moments and outside of those moments. Catastrophic thinking, I would say, is something I need to continue to work on, surprising or not.
I feel that for sure. You are quite the LinkedIn gangster. That's quite a big compliment coming from me.
I appreciate that.
It's my primary social media platform. I consider myself to be a LinkedIn gangster. And then I meet you and I was like, wait a second. You post a lot, you engage a lot. How do you play your LinkedIn game?
Yeah, I'll be open about that. So I do have a team, which is exciting, and they're very, very helpful when it comes to scheduling out posts, right? Most of it is scheduled out pretty far in advance. But, sometimes when you get into that scheduling it out in advance, you miss some of the in the moment opportunities that you want to post about. Like, wait, it's not on my sync calendar. So we've pivoted a little bit there. All the commenting is me. I know a lot of people use AI, which I think is useful, right? It's just a tool to do things faster or maybe be more precise, or within your tone and your sentence formatting and all that, you can create something maybe that's better than what you would have created. So I think it's still useful. I'm not against using AI for copy or anything like that. So posting, having a schedule and having an actual reason on a Monday through Sunday of what I'm posting. Newsletter, a lot of people don't know about the LinkedIn newsletter. That has been phenomenal for the business and just to connect with people. DMing, which I do think is getting very noisy, taking different approaches from videos to hyper personalized videos that I'll do, or actual DMs, but keeping it brief, right? Not a sales pitch, which I've also done and learned from. And I hate getting those, by the way. The podcasting or doing LinkedIn Live. I love LinkedIn. I think, I really love the business professional environment there. There's not a lot of noise of some, other stuff that you maybe see on the news and some other platforms. It's funny. I actually recently changed my phone, but I had this thing called the light phone for 3 years. I said, no more social media. I cut it all off. No one could email me on my phone. It was just call and text. It was amazing. If for anyone that wants to do a reset, get the light phone, call and text. And I think they added a little music now. But then I came back to the dark side and I said, okay, one platform, if I was going to bet on it or invest my own money into it, what is the one platform that I could think could help Stratego and Valid Sites? And it's LinkedIn. And it's been great.
Do you post every day?
Every single day. It's so funny though, because you get all this feedback. Do I think posting every day is helpful? I think so. From a connecting, from getting people to understand who you are, if you're trying to establish some type of trust, if you're looking to connect, it's just so noisy out there. So you have to be somewhat competitive, I think. But there's going to be people that are out there like, you post too much. I get that from my friends all the time. You post too much, or my family, you post too much. You need to stop posting. And it's just like, you know what? I'm going to keep posting, and it's been helpful this far. And I'm sure it annoys people. So they unfollow me or unconnect. Sorry. Posting stuff that's valuable. And I'm not saying that all my posts are valuable. I learn, right? I got up
to posting 3 times a week. And then with this recent algorithm change, I got frustrated because of just the numbers starting to get wonky. I just backed off of it. And so I really have been down to like one post a week. I got to get back on my game. Having met you and see how you play the game, I need to get on your level. So I got to hold myself accountable, posting more frequently.
You know what I think, especially for someone like you that's so busy, you know what I think is more impactful is the commenting. I've noticed all the analytics significantly improve, which is why I personally do this. Like, I personally own all of the commenting and there's no AI. I told myself, okay, look, you're going to go through posts and you're going to obviously connect with the people that I love connecting with and my feed and all that. If it's really interesting and it's, makes you laugh, you're really passionate about it, it's about what you love, comment on it. And people are looking for that too. I love when people comment or they're asking me questions. I'm like, oh, cool, they're engaging. So I like to engage. It's not just for like the end output, like who knows what that would be, right? All the way through. Maybe they want to hire me on. If I'm going to spend my time on this platform, I want to enjoy it. But I have learned that the algorithm loves the commenting. And I'm so surprised still people comment without tagging the original author. Tag them, because there are times where they don't get notified. So they have no idea you commented on it. So if you're truly out there trying to connect and engage, tag them every single time you leave a comment. I've noticed people will respond back.
You mentioned Muhammad Iqbal earlier. I commented recently on one of Muhammad's posts, and his posts are great and like so thoughtful, and he does so much research behind them. I don't even know how he does half of what he does with his posts. But my comment on his post got double the impressions that my own like original post got, that I recorded and like put video to and put real effort into. And then my comment got like bigger reach. And I was like, okay, well, I'm playing this game totally wrong. Okay, I want to come back to the marketing things that you started to like swerve into. So SEO versus AIO. Brands are kind of like starting to go there. So like, how do you think about SEO versus AIO, or what's the other way to say it?
Yeah, I call it AIO, or the ability to be scraped or searched through, Chat GPT or Copilot or Gemini or what have you. Someone actually found me, actually was in the construction space, found me on Chat GPT, and they put certain keywords and it scraped my website, scraped my LinkedIn, and that's how he came upon through Chat GPT, Stratego, which I thought was really cool, but it made me think, what is the strength when it comes to AI search, from my website to my LinkedIn profile, to the show notes within my podcast, right? It's picking up on all those things. On Reddit, right? It's pulling from Reddit and YouTube and Apple Podcast, Spotify. It's going through all of those and actually going through all of your show notes to come up with, right? So body of text is very, very important. I don't think your website needs to be very busy. I still think the SEO process from like your pictures and tagging and all of those things are really important. But I think where things are going, and eventually agent on agent, they need to be able to find these things. And if it's not formatted in the way that AI likes, right, from a contextual point of view, I think it's going to be difficult to be searched in the future if you're trying to be competitive. My other case study, so I know you're tapping on the marketing side, but I actually consulted a marketing company local in Houston that was outsourcing, from editing to LinkedIn posting and copywriting to website design. We had a lot of discussions. We realized that all of those things, we can create an agent that can pull articles from, certain websites, scrape certain websites, newsletters, etc., and actually create, 1,000 to 2,000 word newsletter on a frequent basis. It can create 5 LinkedIn posts. It can do all these things that the humans were doing. And actually, when we looked into the quality, and I'll get back to that, but when we looked into the quality, it was actually better. They would get these notifications. Yep, the AI agent pulled all these things at 8 p.m. every night. The whole team had it, right? And they could do some modifications and some iteration. AI, we outfitted them with agents. And we noticed they were having all these conversations with brands. And they had like multiple people, like account managers and all of that would be on these calls, no transcribers used, hand notes. And then we're trying to develop, right, PR, press releases for them and LinkedIn content for them. And so we integrated an AI transcriber. So every single conversation was what I call a data point. You can query it and you can create posts off of that. You can create videos off of that. Now with like a Google VO, you can literally take a static photo and make it a video. It's the craziest things. I think on a marketing front, I see a lot of these positions being posted. Like I see, and no disrespect, I just, I love what Fit Insider does and all the positions that they post. And I'm like, oh man, like, do they really need that position? And I'm not just marketing, right? There's finance and ops. Like, do they really need that position, or can that be something that's done with an agent? And we saw it at Beyond Active, like from a voice AI to a vision to an avatar. I think there's going to be some organizations, they're going to feel a big impact knowing, oh, I should have looked into this. I should have learned about it, and I should have started dabbling in, because I saw RSG, I saw some other brands, purpose brands. They're all talking about agents right now. This is Anytime Fitness. This is Orange Theory. They're talking about AI agents. This is amazing. Never thought our industry would move this quickly, but it's moving fast.
To the consumer, can't look AI.
Right now, human to AI or human to agent, it still needs to sound, feel, read as a human. But soon, and sorry for the noise, but soon it'll be A to A, it'll be agent to agent, and all of that will go out the window. But for now, many of us, I know, we probably get a sour taste when oh, that's AI. Like, they didn't put a lot of thought into that. So I think you have to solve for that, right? And massage it in, use it as a tool to get what you want to say or do what you want to do faster and maybe even better. But eventually, it's very soon, from our shopping experience to what we read or how we communicate or how we set direction, it will be agent to agent.
You made the point earlier of like not leading with the fact that you're AI first, because consumers, they're not fully comfortable with the robot life. And so it's not something that you really want to shout from the rooftops from a marketing perspective. We used AI to like write this post. You don't need to say you're AI first. You need to operate like you're AI first. And I think that's where, the optics isn't the important thing. It's really the operation.
Yeah, spot on.
We covered a ton of ground today, from finance to marketing to podcasting to entrepreneurship. Is there anything else that's top of mind with you that you want to layer in that we have not talked about?
You brought it up earlier around sharing in our industry and how at times we can be very competitive. But I really would love to challenge our industry and, led by maybe an organization like HFA and some of these larger brands that were here during this week's events. There needs to be more collaboration with each other. I think we have some major problems in big food and big pharma. We mentioned some names today that are heavily involved with the government. There's a tension point there on how much the government should be involved with all of this data that we're collecting, from things like Aura, Whoop, and blood labs, etc. So we'll see where that all goes. I'm more on the front that it should be privatized, but I do think all in all, we need to come together and solve this, whether it be at the kiddo level or if we start on the other end of the spectrum. But we need to chat with each other more. There's a ton of data that we should be sharing with each other so that we know what the heck's going on and how we solve some of these things that we've done to ourselves, from food to pharmaceuticals. And I'm not against those industries. I just think there have been situations and there's things that happen where the dollar is put ahead of our health, and we're doing it to our own selves. I think we need to come together and start having more of those conversations.
1000%. I think the industry benefits from you and your brain power and your perspectives coming to the events, coming to LinkedIn, and pretty consistently being a voice of logic and reason for the industry. Thank you so much for everything that you do, and thank you for being with us here today on the Society Pod.
Yes, you're amazing. Thank you so much.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of the Society Pod.